Hello and welcome to a new episode of UMass Sports Weekly, your number one source for UMass sports. I'm your host, Joey Sade, filling in for the always classy Chris Corso, and we have a lot to get to today. How did the men's soccer team fare in a neck-and-neck match against New England rival UNH on Sunday? Could the football team finally pull out their first win of the season in Saturday's homecoming game? And we'll get an inside look from Saturday's tailgate on the fans' perspective of what it meant to finally be back on the UMass campus for homecoming weekend. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to get into Saturday's festivities. This is UMass Sports Weekly.
This is UMass Sports Weekly.
Welcome back to UMass Sports Weekly. As you know, we're coming off the much-anticipated homecoming game, which took place this past Saturday. Our producer, Jesse Mayfield-Sheehan, and insider, Mark Jean-Louis, went out to the tailgate to get some fan perspective on what it was like to finally be back home.
Go UMass!
Go UMass!
Go UMass!
Go UMass! Those words seem to be on everyone's minds as thousands of fans packed the parking lots outside McGuirk Stadium for UMass's first football game on campus in almost 3 years.
Being it that freshman year was one of the greatest experiences of my life going to the tailgate. Finally having it back here just brings it all back home, coming full circle.
It's good to be back. I feel like the freshmen and sophomores kind of missed out on the experience of having tailgates and stuff.
We've been talking to the seniors and stuff, and they said how lucky we are because 3 years it's been gone, and it's awesome.
Yeah, we get 4 years.
Couldn't be any more happy about it.
While renovations were being done to the stadium following the 2011 season, the team played their home games at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, 90 miles away from the UMass campus. Moving away from home was tough on the team as well as the fan base.
It was nothing like, waking up in the morning, going to the tailgate and then just right on campus. I was a little bit let down.
Well, it's not on home turf, People, it's not the fan base. It's just the travel. The travel is tough.
The team will now play half its home games on campus for the 2014 season, as it gradually makes its move back from Gillette Stadium. After selling out their first home game at McGuirk, things seem to be looking up for UMass football.
The number of people that came out here, not only students, but people that came, 495, 128, all the way out here. It's awesome. We have so much, we have an enormous alumni network, and I'm glad to see so many people turned out for it.
Yeah, and the student section sold out very fast, so that's definitely promising. Hopefully the popularity keeps itself up.
Well, now that we finally have a place to go, a place to call our home, why wouldn't we want to go home?
Mark Jean-Louis, UBC TV 19.
Like we just saw, obviously a great day for UMass and the town of Amherst to finally welcome back the football team. After the tailgate, however, there was a game to be played. Here are some of the highlights. UMass took on Bowling Green this past Saturday on homecoming weekend. We'll start things off early in the first quarter. UMass quarterback Blake Thornapple drops back, fakes the handoff, and finds a streaking Jalen Williams down the right sideline. He's gone for a 60-yard connection, giving UMass an early 7-0 lead and some early momentum in a roaring McGuirk Stadium. Later on in the first, Bowling Green answers. Quarterback James Nappy finds Ronnie Moore on the right side. Moore sheds a tackle, jukes by another, and finds nothing but open space all the way to the end zone, giving Bowling Green its first lead of the game. Early in the second quarter, UMass trailing 13-7. Thornapple fakes one handoff, looks off another, and spies a flying Rodney Mills who dives up for the pylon. Originally called short of the end zone, officials reversed the call to a touchdown, 14-13 UMass. Later in the second, Nappy in the shotgun, pump fakes to his left, and airs it out to wide open Ryan Burbrink down the left sideline as Bowling Green took a 26-21 lead into the half. Middle of the third quarter, with UMass trailing 33-21, the Minutemen were in search of an answer, and Thornapple delivered. He fires a beautifully thrown pass that connects with Alex Kennedy for an 80-yard trip to the end zone. UMass trails now just 33-28. On UMass's next drive, after Kerry Balin Smith forced an interception, Thornapple fakes left, looks right, and lobs it up for Tajay Sharp, who wins the jump ball for the touchdown, putting UMass back on top 35-33. We'll take another look at this one. It was Short Apple's fourth of 5 touchdowns on the day, while he also set the school record for 589 yards in a single game. Bowling Green would respond and never look back. Travis Green takes the handoff, busts through a hole in the middle, and strolls in for the easy score. Falcons back up 40-35. In Bowling Green's next drive, Ronnie Moore takes the quick handoff and is off to the races, rushing to the outside and breaking one tackle on his way to a 22-yard touchdown run, putting the Falcons up 47-35. After Thornapple and Sharp connected for their second touchdown, cutting the Bowling Green lead to 47-42, UMass has one last drive to stage a comeback. Thornapple drops back, finds TJ Blinden for a 6-yard completion, but oops, Blinden fumbles on his way down. Bowling Green's Clint Stevens scoops it up and runs it back to the UMass 25-yard line, and that's your ballgame, folks. Bowling Green escapes Amherst with a 47-42 victory. And we're back to talk about that homecoming game with our football analyst, Xander Manning. Xander, let's get right into it. This past Saturday, the first football game at McGuirk Stadium since 2011, so obviously a lot of hype around it. Can we talk about, what kind of hype did this go into the game? What did UMass draw out of this?
Definitely one of the things that I saw that they dropped out of it was they had a lot of pride coming into the games originally, but they were playing at Gillette Stadium. Complete different feeling this time. Everyone wanted to go to the game. It's their first game back on campus. And they definitely showed that they do belong in D1 football. Blake Frontapple threw 61 passes, completed 36 of them for 589 yards, school record. 5 touchdown passes. That's probably one of the best games he's thrown all season. And then Tajay Sharp, 13 catches for him, 179 yards, and 2 touchdowns for him. Some plays, I don't even know how he caught the ball. It was a great game. They could have won the game. Ahead early, pulling ahead. Great game. Yeah.
Xander, now we were both at that game. Obviously, like we just talked about, home field advantage was huge. But what else was different about this game? Obviously they kept it close. They were able to put a lot of points on the board. They showed their offensive potency, but they also gave up a lot of points. What stuck out to you about the game specifically?
Offensive line. Offensive line definitely stepped up in this game. Last few games, they were giving Frontapple on average about maybe half a second to a second to throw the ball. But this game, I counted, they were giving him at least 2.5 seconds to throw the ball. Definitely giving him time to get what he needs to do done. And he was also very accurate and very precise with his throws. And when he wanted to get it to his receivers, he got it to his receivers in ways that they could catch the ball. Almost like this year, Tom Brady-esque.
And like you just said, you mentioned some silver linings, but what are some of the struggles that UMass did have? Obviously, they did give up 47 points while they did score 42. What are some things that they pull out of this game that they should improve on in practice? Looking forward to next week.
Definitely run defense. The run defense, honestly, has been garbage the whole season. The run defense, they allowed 2 20-plus yard touchdown runs this game. That's honestly pathetic. You're a college football team. You should be playing a lot better than this. The secondary, they've been playing a lot of zone coverage, giving people long streaks down the field just to catch the ball. And basically, they could walk into the end zone. And then they've allowed 40 points on average per game. And that they really need to work on their defense, especially this week coming up against Miami. They need to work on their run defenses. That's basically Miami's complete game there.
Building off what you just said, what can we look forward to next week? They're playing Miami of Ohio. What are some things we should be looking at towards next weekend?
Definitely some things I'd say you need to look for. Like I said, Miami's run game. That's basically their lifeblood right there. Both teams have the exact same record. They're 0-5 and all 0-1 in MAC play. But both teams are going to be hungry for their first win. Both of them really want that. Both of them need that first win. UMass was playing Vanderbilt, going for their first game. They got a huge lead early. They were hungry. They showed that they really wanted it. Both games, they were on the road. We thought they were going to pull ahead. And then, like I said, the defense needs to step up to hold that lead for them. And then Miami's lost to some teams that they probably should have beaten too. So I have a good feeling about this game. They lost to Buffalo, Cincinnati, Eastern Kentucky, and Marshall. Granted, the other team they lost, it was Michigan. Tough team to beat anyway, no matter what. And I'd look out for Frontapple to throw some good passes, a few touchdown passes. Secondary for Miami is struggling a little bit this year, allowing around the same amount of points per game that we are. And also just look out for Andrew Hendricks on the side of Miami. This guy hasn't been throwing the ball for too many touchdowns, but he's been throwing it pretty damn accurately. So I'd say also look out for Spencer McInnes, same level on the run game, and David Frazier for catching the ball. So, and then look out for the defense too, but it's a minor factor as both teams have pretty much the same defense.
Yeah. And like we said earlier, they're 0-5. They're still looking for that first win of the season. We'll see if they can get that this weekend. Thanks, Xander, for your coverage. We'll be right back with some coverage of the men's soccer team. Welcome back to UMass Sports Weekly. Before we get into some men's soccer analysis, we have a package from our insider Marc-Jean Louis on Sunday's game against UNH.
And they taking on New England rival the New Hampshire Wildcats. 27th minute, the score tied 0-0. Mark Morris sends a screamer towards the net that the UNH goalkeeper was just able to knock away. 9 minutes later, UMass's fifth corner kick of the half connects with the head of Matt Keys, but disconnects when Mark Morris collides with the Wildcat defender, thwarting yet another UMass scoring opportunity. Meanwhile, New Hampshire started making some noise of their own. It's Avery Hilbron with the inside pass to Gunnar Eriksson in the box, but Matt Keys swoops down to rescue the UMass defense. But with less than a minute before the whistle, Duff Thompson finds the ball and makes a deposit at the National Bank of UMass. His first goal of the season gives UNH the 1-0 advantage at halftime. In the second half, UMass had a chance with the equalizer. A free kick by Josh Schwartz sends all the Minutemen into the box, but it's Ryan Anderson who's there to save it for UNH. The Minutemen would escape a dangerous free kick from UNH in the 73rd minute, and in the last minute, UMass sent them all into the box for one last shot. Peter Alvarenga scores! Or does he? The official says no. He runs in to wave it off, and time would expire on the Minutemen as they drop a hard one to UNH 1-0.
And we're back. I'm here with Mark and Tim Dennehy, talking about men's soccer. Obviously coming off a tough 1-0 loss to UNH from what we just saw. They fall to 1-7 on the season. Now they've dropped 2 in a row after they won an emotional home opener about 2 weeks ago. Mark, can you talk to me about these last 2 losses to both Harvard and UNH from what we just saw?
Well, I mean, certainly when you start looking at UMass and what they had to deal with on Friday, they certainly had a lot to clean off their plate. We're going to start with the game on Friday when they were taking on Harvard. And just after the first half of the game where UMass was able to get out to a 2-0 lead, it certainly looked like a rematch of the United States versus Belgium here right before our very own eyes. Harvard got 34 shots off in the game, 34 shots off in the game. And in the second half, it was just all of Harvard just on the UMass side of the ball, just taking shot after shot after shot on Ryan Buckingham. He made 17 saves in that one. I still credit a fantastic performance to him. But you can tell going into that game against New Hampshire that they looked exhausted. And from the get-go, it looked like they just did not have it. Especially considering that Luke Pavone, he got a red card in that game against Harvard, so he had to miss out the entire game against UNH. And in that game, it could have been a lot worse given that the defense seemed to break down in the game. I was actually watching this game, and time after time, I saw UNH get deep in on the UMass side towards the box. And if it wasn't for the grace of God, honestly, to be blatantly blunt on that one, UNH could have scored 2 or maybe even 3 in this game. And then on the attack, where you could see that UMass was missing that midfielder presence when they would just get to midfield and then they would just lose the ball completely to the enemy on that side of the field. And so was it possibly the ride coming off that Fairfield game that kind of just shook him up for this one? Maybe, possibly. I couldn't really tell you. But is it possibly the absence of Luke Pavone going to this game? I would think so. When you lose a guy like Luke Pavone, it's really hard to recover from that.
All right, thanks, Mark. Moving on, Tim. You saw that game as well, 1-0 loss to UNH. What were some of your takeaways from that?
Yeah, well, like Mark just said, they were. You could tell that they were tired. They were extremely tired. The shot count in the Harvard game, 33-2, it really just showed. I mean, they were down to 10 men too, and really just showed that summarized the entire game of how much they had to work because they still played physical UMass soccer in that game. So going in 2 days later into the UNH game, you could really tell just how down they were. And most of the game was played on UMass's half, which was not good for the defense because after going down to 10 men 2 days prior, you could tell that they were just worn out. And the midfielders were not helping their defense at all. The midfielders were not connecting with their forwards, and that was just overall the biggest struggle. I thought that the midfielders couldn't connect with their forwards, and the forwards couldn't get their shots off. The team has to be a well-oiled machine, and if the midfielders are not performing up to status, then, well, I mean, you're not going to have a winning team.
Now, Mark, let's switch to the offensive side of the ball. We have Josh Schwartz and Mark Morris are producing most of that offense. What does this team have to do to get more players involved on that side of the ball, specifically?
Well, I mean, for this question, I mean, you have to start looking at the defense, honestly. And when you have a guy like Matt Keys, you just really have to appreciate just what kind of impact a guy like Matt Keys just does for a team like UMass. They list him at 6'4" and about 200 pounds. And you hear this often, he is a man among boys out there. And not only him, but also you have Lenny Siri, the junior. He comes off the bench and immediately, no matter what point in the game you put him in and wherever you put him, he's just an automatic cog out there, whether it's on defense, midfield, or even on the attack. He's also over 200 pounds, and he's a rock out there. So when these two players are on the field, it definitely creates a tough matchup for anyone, for any team that's going up against UMass, especially Matt Keys and Lenny Siri. So, if these two guys weren't on the team, I don't know what kind of hole that UMass would be in. I bet that they are very lucky to have these guys on the team.
And Tim, like we mentioned earlier, they're 1-7. Again, their lone win coming at home 2 weeks ago in that emotional home opener. What does this team have to do moving forward? They're coming off 2 losses, albeit only by 1 goal. They haven't showed a great signs on offense, like Mark just said. What do they have to pick up on moving forward, as they still have some A-10 opponents left, and they have the end of the season coming up?
Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, I think they just need to focus on St. Joseph's this Saturday. It's their first A-10 game, and I think that they really need to control the pace of the game, because these past 2 games that they've lost, they have not controlled the pace that they did in Fairfield. I mean, Fairfield, they started off, they came out hot. They were playing their game, and then UMass really shook it up. They started playing their game, and they started playing at their own pace, and I feel like if UMass continued to do that throughout the rest of the season, played fast, physical UMass soccer, then they can come out with some victories in this A-10, because when it comes down to it, the A-10s, I mean, that's a whole new season in itself. So, I mean, if UMass can be successful, starting off, make a statement in the St. Joseph's game going forward, I think, they have a chance.
Yeah. And welcome back to UMass Sports Weekly. We apologize for those technical difficulties. I'm back here with Liam Byrne. We're talking some women's soccer. We're just talking about their game against UNH. Again, you talked about the defense, how it kept it to a scoreless draw. What else went into that game, Liam?
Well, scoreless draw. Defense was the main thing against Harvard. It's all right. No worries. Other than defense, Harvard outshot us 17-12. But it's a very good match going into A-10 play for Friday against George Mason. So.
And now looking at the record, they're 2-5-3. Again, they have more draws than wins. And that a lot of people can point to the youth they have on the team. They do have 15 underclassmen, between sophomores and freshmen. That will help. That doesn't help Ed Matz. He has to get them incorporated into their system. What do you have to say about the youth on this team? How has it kind of affected their start so far?
Well, I mean, it hasn't been too bad, really, even though they have more ties than wins. But I think to start off, like I mentioned earlier, freshman goalkeeper Cassidy Babin, she had a stellar game in goal for how young she is, 6 saves. And 2 of the 3 sophomores I mentioned last week got some good time against Harvard, Danielle Alvarez and Julia Whitehofer. They had good opportunities to score like they did last week. But the injury to Jackie Bruno, of course, is the big story, which helps the girls have a little motivation to step up and say, we got to step up. Our best player's hurt, and we got to make some opportunities for all of us to score. And Ed Matz believes in every single girl on that team, especially the younger ones, because it's his future right there.
And Liam, let's look forward a little bit. Again, they haven't won a game in about 4 weeks. The last time they were at home was the last time they won the game. And they've been scoreless for the last 4 games. What's some motivation that this team has heading into their upcoming match this weekend? They're 2-5-3. They're not doing as well as they played last year. And they're having some scoring problems that we've talked about, throughout the entire show the last couple of weeks. What is some motivation these girls can draw on?
Well, it's the biggest match that I think they have right now, this season so far. First game at A-10s, starting off with a clean slate, 0-0 in the conference. And George Mason themselves are not having a good season as well. They're 2-7 right now. Okay. So other than that, I mean, they just need to come out with some energy and intensity like they did against Harvard. Against Harvard, they played great defense. They just couldn't get the ball in the back of the net, like every single game this season. I mean, hopefully that'll change when A-10 play comes along, but that's basically what they really have to do.
Like you said, they kick off A10 play this weekend. They did fare pretty well last year against A10 play. They played George Mason. We'll see if they can come off with a win. Thanks, Liam, for your time. On the other side of the break, we'll be back with some field hockey. And we're back to dive into some field hockey analysis. I'm joined by Tommy Kaludi, talking some field hockey. The Minutemen are coming off a big 4-1 win against VCU over the weekend. They snapped a 4-game losing streak, and they improved to 3-7 on the season. But before we get into the good news, let's talk about the bad news last week, Tommy. They lost to Richmond 1-0. Can you talk to me about that game? What went wrong in that game?
Well, again, against Richmond, we had the same old story, same old song and dance with the Minutewomen. Tons of shots, no goals. They had 12 shots on net to Richmond's 5. I mean, Richmond did outcorner them, but UMass's chances far outweighed anything that Richmond could throw, and the Minutewomen just couldn't put the ball in the net. Something that stood out to me, freshman Sarah Hawkshaw, who's been somewhat of a primary scorer, had 4 shots, only 1 on net. So, Joey, what that's telling me is that there's not enough ball distribution. It's just a lot of one-on-one players trying to create their own offense, which really doesn't work. Emma Johansson scored the lone goal for Richmond, and it was, I mean, a fair goal, you know, something that the defense probably couldn't have stopped. But again, I brought this up last week. Sam Carlino, 3 goals on 5 shots. I want to see a goalie do a little better. Like I said before, I want to see her steal a game or 2 for this team, but she didn't do that. So I think I'm so distraught over this, I'd like to bring up the VCU news.
All right, we're going to move on to that good news. Like we said earlier, 4-1 win over VCU. Obviously a big turnaround from being held scoreless against Richmond. What about that game? What specifically stuck out to you? How did they turn it around so quickly?
Well, like I said before, we saw a lot of one-on-one play, a lot of players trying to create their own offense. In this game, we saw a lot of passing, a lot more players working together as a team. We had 2 goals by Haley Cockrum. She led the charge. And then we had a goal by my favorite, Brooke Sabia, and another goal by Nicole Miller. UMass outshot them 14-7. And they outcornered them 6-5. This is a game where UMass's offense ran on all cylinders and was able to put the ball in the net. What I like to see here is the fact that UMass really created chances from player to player. They actually had assists on goals, which is a really positive sign. You have players actually passing, working together. And what's really positive to me is that the UMass offense isn't working alone. You have each girl contributing on each play. It's kind of, they have a system set up. They know what they're doing. They know how they want to score. They know when they want to score. And, you know, rolling into A10 play, I think this is a good win for them.
And now talking about that A10 play, obviously they haven't started this season the way they had hoped for, as they did last year, being one of the top 10 teams in the country. Let's talk about moving into A10 play. They're playing more familiar foes. They know these teams. They play them every year. Are they going to find their groove finally as the season comes to a end?
Well, like you said last year, UMass absolutely steamrolled through the A10, and besides Richmond, I think there's no reason that they can't do that again. Like I've said before, this team definitely has talent. I mean, these girls lose a lot of 1-goal games, and I think they can hit their stride, especially in the A10 with some pretty weak opponents. I think, you know, they can build their confidence up, get some of the younger girls more involved, and really kind of hit a stride there. With the A10, you have teams, probably not the best competition, but you know, it's all about the playoffs. You try to get there, you try to get to the tournament, and I think this A10 is very winnable for UMass. I think if they can get over the hump that is Richmond, they have a really good chance of making a good run.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, Friday they play home against Lock Haven. We'll see if they can finally get back on that track and
Hopefully.
play as the way they did, you know, last year. We're hoping they can do that. They're one of the best UMass teams we had on campus.
The best,
hopefully,
in my opinion.
They were the best. Hopefully they can get back to that mantra. Again, thanks, Tommy, for the coverage. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. That will do it from us here at UMass Sports Weekly. Thanks for tuning into our show again. We'll catch you next week, same time, same place. I'm your host, Joey Sade, and have a great week, UMass.